Blueberry pie with frozen blueberries is easy and delicious at any time of the year. Here I have 24 ounces or 3 cups or 680 grams of frozen blueberries that I have defrosted totally. And these are actually wild blueberries. I don't know if you can tell, but they're a bit smaller than normal blueberries. And when I went to the store, the frozen wild blueberries were actually cheaper than the frozen conventional blueberries, which I thought was a sign from the universe that I need to make this recipe with wild blueberries. Wild blueberries are smaller, they're a tad bit sweeter, but honestly I think the main difference is that they have more of a blueberry flavor. I know that sounds odd, but they have just a very strong blueberry flavor, kind of like how wild strawberries are really small and they have a super intense strawberry flavor. So I think these will be good. And honestly, if you have normal blueberries that are frozen, I think this recipe will work fine. I am using 1 cup of sugar plus 2 tablespoons. So as I measure it, 210 grams plus 15 for 240 grams of white sugar. And in here, I also have 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, 8 tablespoons of cornstarch or 80 grams. And here I have 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice. So that's 1 tablespoon plus 1.5 teaspoons. Here I have a 9-inch pie crust. Of course, I used my homemade pie crust recipe. It's simple, easy, and delicious. But you can use your own crust, store-bought, doesn't matter. All I did is I put it in the pie plate. I par-baked it. Before I put it in the oven, I pricked it with a fork. I par-baked it for 5 minutes at 350 Fahrenheit. So now all I have to do is mix together the ingredients for the blueberry pie filling. Like I said, I think this blueberry pie recipe with frozen blueberries would be fine with normal blueberries as well. The only thing is that I think you might want to add in a little bit more sugar, because with the wild blueberries, I honestly think a cup would be okay. And if you don't like a super sweet pie, I think a cup would be okay with normal as well. But I would add a tad bit more sugar. 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons for sure, if not 1 cup and another 1/4 cup. And then maybe I do 1 tablespoon of lemon juice instead of 1.5, because conventional blueberries are usually a little bit more tart. I finished mixing together the filling, and of course I stuck my finger in and I had to try it, and it tastes awesome. It's going to be a great pie. Like I said, the bottom crust is par-baked. I'm just going to pour in the filling. Now that my blueberry filling is in my pie, I'm going to put on the top crust. Like always, I rolled out the top crust between 2 pieces of wax paper. Take off the extra flour. And in order to put it on top of the pie, I'm going to pick it up like this, shake off some of the extra flour, and turn it upside down and place it over the pie where I want it. So this is your opportunity to position it over the middle as much as you can, or as best you can, and then just lift off the other piece of wax paper. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my, I almost called it a spoon, I'm going to take my little knife and I'm going to take it around the edge and cut off the bit of dough that is hanging over the edge. Now that the overhanging crust is trimmed, I'm just going to take my fingers and pinch the dough together around the sides. Now that the edges are sealed, it's time to cut some slits. I use a ruler to find the center, and I poked it with a toothpick, and now I'm just going to use my ruler to guide my knife as I cut some slits into the top of the pie. You do not need to go through all the mess or all the, as the Argentines would say, quilombo of using a ruler, but I like to be exact with my pies. I am cutting slits because as the fruit filling cooks in the oven, it's going to produce steam, and that steam is going to push the top of the pie up. And as the top of the pie cooks, it's going to take on a dome shape. So you might have a hollow dome in your pie, which is slightly unsightly. It's not the end of the world, but this will make sure that your pie looks nice. Now that I've cut my slits into the top of my blueberry pie with frozen blueberries, I'm going to sprinkle on some sugar. I have 2 tablespoons, 30 grams of white sugar, and I'm simply going to sprinkle it on top. I almost forgot. I really like to sprinkle sugar on top of my fruit pies because it adds a touch more sweetness, but not too much because I think the sugar maybe starts to caramelize a bit in the oven. But really, it adds great texture. It adds some nice crunch. This is going to go into the oven at 350 Fahrenheit for, I am guessing, 50 minutes. But I will let you know. My blueberry pie was in the oven at 350 for between 50 and 52 minutes. Honestly, I forgot to set the timer right when it went in, so I'm not 100% sure. This blueberry pie with frozen blueberries was incredibly delicious. In all honesty, I've never had blueberry pie before. This was the first and only blueberry pie that I've had in my entire life, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But honestly, I thought it was pretty good. I'm not quite sure why, but unlike cooking strawberries, I feel like cooking blueberries accentuates the flavor and makes them taste even more like blueberries. Together with the fact that I use wild blueberries, which are already more flavorful, this pie was one of the most flavorful fruit pies that I have ever had. Like I said, this was the first blueberry pie that I had ever made or tasted, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but I think that I guessed perfectly in terms of the amount of sugar and the amount of lemon juice that would be appropriate. And once my blueberry pie with frozen blueberries was cut and sliced, you could see that it gelled perfectly. Although it wasn't runny at all, it was still just ever so slightly oozy. That soft, moist blueberry filling combined with that flaky crust and the crunch of the sugar on top, the combination of textures and flavors was incredible. Although you could definitely use your own pie crust or even a store-bought pie crust, my melted butter and canola oil pie crust added just enough of flavor to make it interesting without overpowering or taking away from the flavor of the blueberry filling. Although some people might see it as a negative, I think that using frozen blueberries was actually a plus because if you use frozen blueberries, you can make this pie at any time of the year. Also, unlike fresh produce that's sold in most supermarkets, frozen fruits and vegetables are flash frozen when they're perfectly ripe. Fresh produce at the supermarket is usually picked a little bit before when it's truly ripe, so it doesn't have a chance to become as flavorful as it could be. Although I will admit that a blueberry patch in your backyard is probably the best option of all, I think that using frozen blueberries when making blueberry pie or frozen fruit when making any type of fruit pie, whether it be strawberry, peach, or raspberry, is the best option for most people. So, if you're looking for the best blueberry pie recipe, be sure to try this one. You won't regret it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.